Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Wanted to make a quick video today. You saw the title, Lying to Companies, Lying on Your Resume. All right. The reality is you're probably going to have to. You probably don't have a choice. Chances are, especially in the tech industry, your resume is never going to 100% line up with the job that you're applying to. And especially the way that the industry is right now, where developers are forced to apply to hundreds of jobs, if not thousands. The idea that you have the luxury to only apply to jobs that match your resume is lunacy. It's just completely unrealistic. So let's have a discussion about what are some appropriate lies and what are maybe gray areas. Your tech stack, we as engineers, we all know what we can do and what we can't do. We know what our level of dedication is. If a tech stack has Angular on it and I don't have Angular on my resume, I will still apply, knowing that I can learn Angular. Give me a reasonable amount of time, as long as it's not one afternoon. Give me a reasonable amount of time. Give me exposure to your Angular project, and I'll be up and running in Angular in no time. Now, if I've never touched C++ before, and this is a C++ exclusive job, now that is a lie that is going to come back to bite you. So I suppose when you're going to tell a lie to a company, have the understanding that you might be pressed to the fire. You might be forced to prove whether or not you can or cannot do this. And I mean, that should bear out in technical interviews, but there's a chance it won't. And if you end up stumbling into a C++ job and all you've ever done before was React, you are going to immediately be found out as a fraud and fired. The ramp up time to go from nothing to competent and productive in C++ is a longer ramp up time than any company is probably willing to give you. And so that would be sort of an unforgivable lie, but only for you and your career. From the perspective of the company, they would be like, okay, this is really inconvenient. It's a pain in the ass. This guy wasted our time. Fire him and hire somebody else. It is what it is. It's so windy outside. There's trash blowing down the street like those dust things you see in cowboy movies. What are some other common lies? Removing a gap in your resume. If you got laid off and then there was a couple months before your next job, I don't think it's a big deal to just fill in that gap. Okay, I'm lying about when I got laid off. It was actually a month later. And I'm lying about when I got the next job. It was actually a month later, or a month sooner and later. You know what I mean? Like there was a 3-month gap and then you shrink that to like a 1-month gap. A trivial lie. Now, that's actually such a trivial lie that I don't do it because I don't think it matters. But some people get really obsessed with gaps in their resume. And I appreciate that some hiring managers are really obsessed with gaps in the resume. But frankly, I mean, maybe it's just the engineering industry, software in general, like being able to do the job is the only thing that companies care about. Can you do the job? Can we give you work to do and expect you to fucking do it? If you can do that, then they seem to care very little about other stuff. Okay, another lie that I really support is exaggerating the significance of the role that you've had in previous work. Now, I'm not saying to claim that you did things that you didn't do, and I'm not even saying to outright lie about what you did do, but maybe omit details that would appropriately scale your contribution. What does that mean? Maybe it means you're on like a 4-person team and you take turns doing presentations to the clients, and you have to do a presentation every week. And so every month you have to do one presentation. Well, maybe you just omit the idea that you guys took turns, and in the resume, it sounds like you just did all the presentations because you wrote it up as I presented the clients with our weekly update report, and I, showed them how to use the software. You don't have to include that you shared that responsibility with other people. That's not important information. And all it does is make you look bad. So don't include that. Okay. And now there's a couple of things that are sort of like tangential. 2-week notice is a joke. Okay. They will never give you a notice when they're firing you. They will fire you on your birthday. I actually got fired on my birthday at the first job, the first tech job I was at, which he was a lunatic, the CEO, but he was great because he fired me first thing in the morning before the day of the work started. So he fired me at like 7 a.m. and the day starts at 8. And so it was fantastic. I had the day off on my birthday. So I was happy about it. If he had fired me at the end of the day, I would have been pissed. But 2-week notice, an absolute joke. Just completely disregard it. Work for a company until it is expedient for you to not work there anymore and then leave. I would say the only circumstance in which you should give 2-week notices, gassy, is if you really like the person you work for. If you have like a great relationship with your boss and you sincerely don't want to leave them hanging, looking for a new employee at the spur of a moment, then give them a notice. And then you can use them as a reference in the future. That's totally cool. But 99% of the time, especially if you're working for a big faceless corporation, they will fire you or lay you off without thinking twice. It doesn't matter if you or your family members, if their lives literally depend on the health care that you get from this job, they don't give a shit. They will throw you out into the street in a heartbeat. So this company loyalty thing basically stopped existing in like the 80s. And today we are all just mercenaries, and mercenaries get paid, and mercenaries get paid to do a job. And as long as they're doing a job and getting paid, as far as I'm concerned, that's where the contract ends. Okay, next then, this is a good, I got a little list I'm working on here. Extra responsibilities. So needless to say, when you're in the interview environment, brother, you can ask me to bury bodies and I'll say yes. Are you familiar with deep sea exploration? Of course I am. And if you need me to do that, I'll do it. Underwater welding? Of course I can do that. But make no mistake that once you've signed a contract for XYZ responsibilities, you are not ever guaranteed to be rewarded for volunteering to take on additional responsibilities. And this is one of the most disgusting manipulations of especially younger people in my generation and younger, where there's this notion, it's because we were lied to by our parents. I mean, that's the reality. The boomers lied to us about work-life balance and about company loyalty and all these things, just complete lies. And one of the lies is, or the result that the lie has, is that young people will take on extra responsibilities with this fairy tale in their head that the additional work will one day be rewarded, that somebody somewhere in this mystical land is keeping a careful note of all of the extra work you do. And one day they'll grace you with fantastic rewards. Oh, you remember that all that extra work you did? It didn't go unnoticed. But this is the real world. It is intentionally ignored. Your extra work is intentionally ignored because, especially again, big corporations, they have the attitude that anytime we can get away with doing the same amount of work with fewer people, we should. So an environment that you'll commonly see, and you'll hear this story, as if you're a young person, especially as you get older, you'll hear this story quite a few times, that Sally, Jim, and Bob are all working the same position at a company. And then Bob quits and Sally gets fired. And now Jim, I said Sally, Jim, Bob, right? And now Jim is expected to take on the responsibility of all three people's work, but they will not get paid more money. And if they bring this up to the company, the company will either fire them on the spot or make some vague promise that they will never deliver on. They'll tell them something along the lines of, oh, well, you're right. You are being overworked right now. But, things are tight right now and we're looking to hire more people. So we'll take some of that stress off you in no time. And then nothing will ever change. You will be, you will be abused by these companies if you don't put your foot down. You need to learn early in your career to make this a principle that you stand by and that this is a hill that you're willing to die on. You will either only stick to the scope of work that you agreed to, and you will not do anything outside that scope without an in-writing agreement for additional compensation, or when you do step out of that scope, you do so with the assumption that you are not and will never be compensated for it. Let that sit, let that settle for a minute. If you step out of the scope, assume that you will not be compensated. That is the appropriate relationship with these corporations, because chances are you won't be. And then finally, commitment. Okay. Once again, this is something it's one thing in the interview. In the interview process, they say, Brian, what makes you want to work at our soulless corporation? And I'll talk about how it's always been my dream to work at a soulless corporation. And they say, Brian, well, what's your level of commitment? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I say, forget about 5 years. I expect to be at your soulless corporation for the rest of my life until I die. Because that's what they want to hear. In reality, I'll be there exactly as long as I feel like working for them. And the day that I don't feel like working for them anymore, and I have any other financial opportunity, right? Obviously, if you need to pay rent, you're in a tough spot. But assuming that you have the freedom to quit, I'm just going to quit whenever I feel like it. And that's the honest mentality of all workers. Any worker who has that they're in a financial position where they can quit anytime they want, they are just going to quit at will. And I made a video a little while ago about these lies that we tell companies and the lies that companies tell us. The idea of what makes you want to work for us? What makes you passionate about our soulless corporation as opposed to the other soulless corporations? And it becomes real tiresome to bounce these lies back and forth, right? They want me to be passionate about their faceless, soulless corporation. They want me to have the expression that I'm going to work here until I die. Now, I'll never ask for more money. Whereas at the same time, they know deep down inside that if I don't immediately need them to feed myself, I'll quit whenever it's expedient. And so that's my opinion on lying in this job market. Seeking Squalor, Toilet Umbrellas and Champagne Chandeliers. Buy it on Amazon. I need to start plugging that book in the beginning of the fucking video. And subscribe to my channel. And let me know down below what lies you think are acceptable to tell to companies. And maybe what lies are in the gray area. And then what lies are unacceptable. And tell me what lies you've heard from your bosses. I'm telling you, I had a boss who used to lie about overtime all the time. On Friday, he'd be like, he would green light. He'd say, go ahead and work all weekend. We really need this done. And then on Monday, he'd say, oh, well, we just don't have it in the funds, but we appreciate the work. And I'd say, not so fast, motherfucker. I recorded the conversation. And apparently you can report businesses to whatever government bureau handles workers' protection rights. And apparently just to be reported is quite detrimental for a business. And so that employer who didn't want to pay me my overtime, I just threatened to report him and he immediately paid me. That's the beauty of recording a conversation. Check your state's laws to see if you're a single party consent state or a dual party consent state. There's a lot of states in this country who don't believe in freedom, apparently. So you're not allowed to record without the consent of both parties, which effectively means you're never allowed to record. But single party consent state, you can record anytime, any place, whatever you want, totally legal, as the way it should be, because there's no other way to protect yourself with these corporations. If you send a rough, an email or whatever, and then a boss says, hey, why don't we jump on a call? Hey, why don't I give you a call right now? They want to talk to you because they don't want to leave a paper trail. They're about to say some shit that might be used against them in a court of law. So always make them leave a paper trail. Always. Anyway, that's it for today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.